Welcome to this relatively new course in social innovation, introductory course. My name is Olaf Merling. I'm really excited to be here. Now, in terms of this course, you can take this course and soak yourself in it, probably even spend a lifetime in it. But you can also take a relatively quick dip and get a great deal out of it. It's very hard to predict when that moment, when you do get a lot out of it, actually will come. And that's partly, and I do speak throughout this course, and throughout this video, from my bias and my position as a psychologist. I'm a social psychologist. I've obviously had some clinical training as well. And so if you think about social problems like you think about a patient, then you probably will understand the kind of perspective that I bring in treating problems, social problems. You analyze them and attempt to work out a way, even if it's a counterintuitive way, of tackling that problem and overcoming it so that the person gains, or the problem gains, a permanent solution that isn't worse than the cure. The issue of how to reach that therapeutic moment, that moment when there's a click, requires you as a social innovator to be quite patient in dealing with the patient, in fact very patient, because there are, as the course will illuminate, a number of difficult characteristics of social problems that are the actual cause of why they are social problems. I mean, if social problems were easy to cure, they would have been cured a long time ago. Poverty, for example, or lack of education in certain countries, or pollution or environmental problems, whichever you choose to focus on. Now, in terms of the challenge for me in putting this course together, I had to ask myself, how do you teach social innovation? And to be honest, I think some of the most effective moments in this course could well be from reading case studies or looking at videos of moments where major social problems have been successfully, more or less, tackled. Now, there are a number of reasons why I believe a course like this would benefit from simply presenting case after case. That's not something I have done, by the way, but that it would benefit from taking that perspective. First of all, you will find in social innovation courses in general, if you shop around, you'll find that there is quite a strong emphasis on the story. The story, when we talk about it in the social innovation context, refers to a compelling narrative of the cure, if you like. And that's because the story has very strong connections with us as humans from birth. The way we deal with fairy stories and the characteristics of traditional stories are compelling for us because they contain a narrative that takes us from the beginning, where there is a problem, all the way through to an end. And partly of what we try and do as social innovators is grab people's attention, which is an aspect of the story, and also bring them to a conclusion and compel them by the narrative to be involved. That's why there is this issue and value related to having stories within social innovation. The second reason why I find it good, or find it a potential positive to deal with teaching of social innovation simply by telling stories, is that it is possible to learn complex things from simply hearing complex things explained over and over again. Now, I can remember during my master's in psychology, learning of a particularly interesting case, which struck me at the time, probably because of the age I was at, and that's about learning whether girls like you or not as a guy. And they attempted with quite a number of shy guys in this particular study that the professor was telling us about, to train people to learn the cues about whether they were liked or not liked by the opposite sex. And they struggled with it. they found it very difficult to actually operationalize or pin down what components of people's cues meant she likes you or she doesn't like you. They found, however, that by simply presenting a very simple piece of information, which is they'd present an interaction and then gave the person feedback. She likes you or she doesn't like you. And by repeatedly experiencing that and that moment of feedback, through going through those storylines, if you like, and repeatedly getting the feedback, this works, this doesn't work, people were able to learn something quite complex, something social and complex from that iterative or reiterative process. The third reason why I find stories is a good way to teach innovation, social innovation, is because, in fact, there's a dearth. There's an awful desert of research in this field. There's not a lot of good quality empirical research that satisfies me as a social scientist that this is the right way to do social innovation, and this is the most effective, and these are the pitfalls that you can experience. This is a new and emerging field, and it does need a lot more to fill it in. Meanwhile, we have a massive and interesting history of social innovations, and I wrote a few down here. But if you go through the history of social innovations, you go from that pessimism that you might get from me saying, there's not a lot of research in the field, to, in the applied world, beautiful, extensive, impressive examples of how the world has changed, how social problems have been dealt with. Things like shareware, trade unions, open source software, the whole open source movement, which is about people sharing freely stuff that they used to sell to each other. The green movement, social insurance, feminism, the rise of modern participatory politics, microcredit, citizen journalism, crowdfunding. All these ideas are unified in a number of ways. First of all, they're new, or they were new to the time when they were first introduced, and they tend to break up old ways of doing things. And they're social in that they change the way that people interact with each other. The way that people even consider each other or have attitudes towards each other are broken by these innovations. There's something else in terms of human existence about these different examples that I've just given, and that they are positive, and very importantly, that they have these flow-on or ripple effects that cascade through a number of different domains in society that go beyond their original sphere of influence. Now, I've listed here a few of the common concepts that you'll find repeated in social innovation, and I've included on the course website, the Moodle site, I've included a number of scholarly and semi-scholarly works that will give you a fairly traditional introduction to this new field, and some of these terms will get mentioned more or less frequently. First of all, we'll go with disruption. One of my favourites in a sense, even though it is a little bit of a vague phrase in the way it's used in the literature. Disruption, to me, I can define that as breaking up of old ways. It's also going to the essence of surprise that's in social innovation. You catch an existing problem by surprise, by simply attacking an existing problem in the same old ways will not work. Because if, as I said before, it would work, it would have already worked. So we need to disrupt existing patterns in order to break those existing problems. It's also social innovation, you'll see references, and they'll use different terms for this. It's also about well-being. It's an assumption of this field that the goals we are going for are not profit-related, but relate to human outcomes that matter, or animal outcomes in some cases. And in economic terms, you could say it also refers to what we call externalities, which are consequences of behaviour that are not captured in traditional economic terms in, for example, the profit margin. And that can include, blue skies and peace and quiet, which is disrupted, for example, by noisy factories or traffic. So this issue of well-being and doing good, if you like, to be a little bit simplistic about it, is at the core of social innovation. Next, I certainly take this as strong backbone of this field, is this issue of multidisciplinarity. Social innovation isn't mature enough to be called a discipline in itself, but it is a grab bag of different disciplines. Now, you know my bias. I'm a psychologist. I bring a lot of the psychological tools to the table. I've also got training in sociology and a number of other fields, and I am very multidisciplinary, perhaps a little bit too much so in my own bias. But I think that's a beautiful thing about social innovation, and that is that it is prepared to grab whatever tools are relevant and work. I also find this issue of being applied. There is a lot of waffly books and journals and journal articles and theories beginning to assemble around the field of social innovation. I'm not terribly excited by it, but I'm reassured that social innovation actually has as its core, this issue of not just talking about it, but actually getting something done. Systems thinking is something you've probably heard of, but I think it's particularly pertinent to this field. Systems thinking refers to the fact that this goes with that, and that if you change one thing, you end up changing another. I talk about in this course the dangers of systems in the way you do social innovations, that you can actually have secondary or friendly fire, so to speak, secondary effects of the change that you make, that if you're not careful, you can actually do more damage than you do good. The Oxford text that's on the Moodle site refers to linear and less linear patterns, and here again it's referring to this issue of systems, that things that doesn't just cause that, but can end up looping back and actually ruining the whole thing in the first place, so that you get contradictory or boomerang effects from social innovations. Now, humans are systems thinking creatures, and the way that different elements of our personality and tendencies hang together is a good warning as to how the social world works in a system sense. So people who tend to believe in one conspiracy theory, for example, will also be susceptible or vulnerable, or tend to believe in other conspiracy theories. Finally, there's this issue of motivation. I talk quite a lot about happiness in this course, but people in social innovation have made the point that the reason that social innovation exists is because there is plenty that's going wrong in the social sphere that needs to be fixed. The global sphere, the community sphere, the national sphere, they all have problems, plenty of them, that can provide fodder for a topic like social innovation. So this is not a science that is, abstract or removed from the real world, and there's a whole basket of reasons for wanting to make this a science that is, as I said before, applied. Now, in putting together this course, I've put together, in terms of the Moodle site, and I'll see if I can just bring that up onto the screen here. The Moodle site contains, as you can see, a lot of different resources, some of which are full books and large articles that you can access, and also some videos. I've tried to sort them into 6 different modules or themes, not particularly successfully, simply because this subject is very, very hard to break up into nice, clean sections or lumps. It is, you can't talk about motivation without talking about the tools to, for example, I've got the section on the human side of which is basically the motivation side of it, and then I've got a section on the tools, but how do you disentangle those two fields? I've had great difficulty in doing so. I've tried to do so. There's a lot of resources on here. I'm not expecting you to go through all of them and read every single word. Again, going back to what I said originally, you can have wonderful insights and experience something really quite worthwhile about this course from being a bit of a dilettante and dipping in to different resources that I've included. Now, I haven't put it up yet on the website, but I will be by the time you listen to this video. I've also produced a course textbook, which is a little bit unusual. It's more like a course magazine. One of my backgrounds, as you'll read there, is as a journalist, and in a small organisation I was also encouraged to actually do my own graphic design, so I quite enjoyed putting this together for you. And that particular magazine, or textbook if you like, certainly betrays my obsession with multidisciplinarity, and I've used examples from everywhere from criminology to archaeology and sociology, and of course psychology, my own personal favourite. Anyway, welcome to the course. I hope you enjoy it. There's a section in terms of the assignments where you get a fair bit of information about what the assignments require you to do. Please contact me. I'm very contactable, particularly by email, and I really do look forward to working with you over the course of the semester. We will be holding some Zoom classrooms. I'll be doing that flexibly to try and fit in with your times. So thanks very much, and see you soon.